Colonel Christina Keane gripped the controls of her B-52 Stratofortress as lightning illuminated the cockpit like a strobe light. Hurricane Miranda's fury surrounded her massive bomber, winds howling at 120 miles per hour. Below, 7 Navy SEALs waited in a crumbling monastery, one bleeding to death. Every pilot on base had been grounded. Every rescue helicopter was useless. But Christina wasn't every pilot. 2 years ago, a storm had taken her brother's life during a failed rescue mission. Today, she would defy nature itself to ensure no one else would die waiting for a miracle. And speaking of miracles, I want to know where all you incredible viewers are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Let's see how far this story reaches across our great nation. 3 miles above the Gulf of Mexico, Colonel Christina Keane watched the horizon swallow the morning sun. Her B-52 Stratofortress cut through thin air like a steel arrow, 8 engines humming their familiar song. Behind her, 5 crew members ran through their training checklist. In front of her, nothing but endless blue sky. "Looking good up here, Thunder One." The voice crackled through her headset from Barksdale Air Force Base. "Weather's holding steady. Complete your run and head home." "Copy that, Control." Christina adjusted her grip on the yoke. The bomber responded like an extension of her own body. 18 years of flying these giants had taught her every vibration, every sound, every subtle shift in the aircraft's mood. Her navigator, Master Sergeant Tom Rodriguez, pointed at his screen. "Storm system's still building southeast of us, Colonel. Miranda's getting stronger." Christina glanced at the radar display. The hurricane looked like a white spiral galaxy against the green screen. "How strong?" "Category 3 now. Moving northwest at 15 knots. Rodriguez tapped his pencil against the console. "Good thing we're heading home." The radio squawked again. "All aircraft, this is Barksdale Control. Hurricane Miranda has intensified to Category 4. All training flights return to base immediately. Weather pattern is shifting faster than predicted." Christina felt her stomach tighten. Fast-moving storms meant surprises. Surprises meant danger. She pushed the throttles forward, and the B-52 surged ahead. "Thunder One, increase speed to maximum. New trajectory puts the storm over the base in 6 hours." "Roger, Control." "Thunder One coming home fast." Rodriguez looked up from his charts. "Colonel, you remember Hurricane Katrina? How it changed direction overnight?" She remembered. Christina had been a young captain then, watching helplessly as the storm devastated New Orleans. But she remembered something else too. Something that made her hands shake on the controls. 2 years ago. Hurricane Dolores. Her younger brother Marcus flying a Marine rescue helicopter through 70-mile-per-hour winds. His last radio call still played in her head during quiet moments like these. "Christina, if something happens to me, don't blame yourself. We knew the risks." The helicopter had gone down 30 minutes later. "No survivors." "Colonel?" Rodriguez's voice pulled her back to the present. "You okay?" "I'm fine." She forced her hands to relax. "Let's get this bird on the ground." The flight back to Louisiana took 40 minutes. Below them, the Gulf waters had turned from blue to gray. Whitecaps stretched to the horizon. By the time they touched down at Barksdale, the first outer bands of wind were bending the trees. Christina watched through the cockpit window as ground crews scrambled to secure aircraft. Tie-down chains rattled against the concrete. Men shouted orders over the growing wind. The base looked like an anthill someone had kicked. "All pilots report to the operations center immediately." The announcement echoed across the flight line. Inside the operations building, Christina found 60 other pilots crowding around weather monitors. The screens showed Hurricane Miranda as an enormous white disk covering half the Gulf. Red numbers flashed across the bottom. Wind speed, 145 miles per hour. Category 4, bordering on 5. General Robert Hayes stepped to the front of the room. His gray hair was perfectly combed despite the chaos outside. Christina had known Hayes since she was a lieutenant. He'd flown with her father in Vietnam. "People, this storm is unlike anything we've seen in 20 years, Hayes announced. "All flights are suspended until further notice. No exceptions." A young pilot raised his hand. "Sir, what about emergency missions?" "There won't be any emergency missions, Lieutenant. Nobody flies in winds over 100 miles per hour. Not helicopters, not fighters, not even our B-52s. Hayes looked directly at Christina. "I know some of you think you can handle anything. But this storm will kill you." Christina stared at the weather display. The hurricane's eye looked like a giant white donut spinning toward the coast. She thought about Marcus again. He'd believed he could handle anything too. "Dismissed," Hayes said. "Go home. Secure your houses. Stay safe." As the pilots filed out, Christina lingered by the weather station. Rodriguez joined her, studying the satellite images. "Nasty piece of work," he said quietly. "Yeah." Christina traced the storm's path with her finger. "Tom, you ever wonder what it's like in the eye? That perfect calm surrounded by all that violence?" "Can't say I want to find out, Colonel." The radio on the weather station crackled to life. A different frequency. Military Emergency Channel. Any station, this is SEAL Team 7. We have a medical emergency and need immediate evacuation from grid coordinates." Static swallowed the rest of the transmission. Christina and Rodriguez looked at each other. "Did you hear that?" she asked. "SEAL Team requesting evacuation." Rodriguez checked his watch. In the middle of Hurricane Miranda, 300 miles southeast of Barksdale Air Force Base, Commander Jake Morrison crouched behind a crumbling stone wall. Rain hammered the ancient monastery like machine gun fire. His 7-man SEAL team had been on Isla Perdida for 12 hours. What started as a simple reconnaissance mission had become something much worse. "Control, this is Neptune 7, Morrison spoke into his radio. "We've confirmed the target. The facility is operational. Repeat, the weapons facility is hot." Static answered him. Morrison tried again. "Control, do you copy? We have eyes on chemical weapons. Multiple storage containers. This is not a drill." "Nothing." Sergeant Maria Santos crawled up beside him. Rain dripped from her helmet. "Comms are down, Commander. Storm's interfering with everything." Morrison nodded. He'd expected communication problems. Hurricane Miranda was still 200 miles away, but her outer bands were already pounding the island. What he hadn't expected was what they'd found in the concrete bunkers below them. Chemical weapons. Dozens of containers marked with skull and crossbones. Men in hazmat suits loading them onto trucks. This wasn't an abandoned facility. It was an active operation preparing to ship death around the world. "Santos, get me a count on those containers." "Already did, sir." 42 confirmed. Enough chemical agents to poison half of Miami. Morrison felt ice in his stomach. They'd come here looking for evidence of terrorist activity. Instead, they'd stumbled onto something massive. Something that couldn't wait for the storm to pass. "Where's Miguel?" Morrison asked. Santos pointed toward a cluster of palm trees. "Our local contact is supposed to meet us there in 10 minutes. He's our ride off this rock." Morrison checked his watch. Their extraction helicopter had been grounded hours ago when the storm intensified. Miguel, a local fisherman who worked with American intelligence, was supposed to take them to a safe harbor on the island's north side. From there, they'd wait out Hurricane Miranda. But 42 containers of chemical weapons changed everything. Petty Officer Davis slithered up beside them. "Commander, we've got movement from the facility. 3 trucks heading toward the harbor." Morrison grabbed his binoculars. Through the rain and growing darkness, he could see headlights winding down the coastal road. The trucks moved slowly, carefully. Whatever they were carrying was valuable enough to risk driving in a hurricane. They're not waiting for the storm to pass, Morrison said. They're using it as cover. Santos wiped rain from her face. Sir, if those trucks reach a ship, we'll never track those weapons. Morrison made his decision. Davis, Jackson, circle around to the harbor. Don't engage, just observe. Williams, Chen, maintain overwatch on the facility. Santos, you're with me. We're meeting Miguel. The team split up, disappearing into the stormy darkness like ghosts. Morrison and Santos reached the palm grove 5 minutes early. The wind had picked up, bending the trees nearly horizontal. Morrison's radio crackled with weather updates from distant stations. Miranda was now a Category 4 hurricane, moving faster than anyone had predicted. There. Santos pointed through the rain. A figure approached through the trees. Miguel Vasquez was a small man with weathered hands and intelligent eyes. He'd been helping American operations for 3 years. Morrison trusted him. Commander Morrison? Miguel called over the wind. We must hurry. The boats will not wait much longer. Miguel, we can't leave yet. We found something big in that facility. Miguel stepped closer. In the dim light, Morrison saw something wrong in the man's eyes. Fear. And something else. Commander, please. We must go now. The chemical weapons, Miguel. Did you know about them? Miguel's face went pale. I cannot discuss this. Please, follow me to the boats. Santos tensed beside Morrison. Her hand moved toward her weapon. Miguel, Morrison said slowly, how long have you known about the chemicals? The fisherman looked toward the facility, then back at Morrison. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible over the storm. I am sorry, Commander. My family, they have my family. Red laser dots appeared on Morrison's chest. Down! Santos shouted. Morrison dove left as automatic weapons fire erupted from the trees. Bullets chewed up the ground where he'd been standing. Santos rolled behind a fallen log, returning fire with her M4 carbine. Miguel was running toward the facility, shouting in Spanish. Santos, how many shooters? At least 6. Maybe more. She fired 3 quick rounds. They've got us surrounded. Morrison's radio crackled. Commander, this is Davis. We've got big problems at the harbor. Armed men are setting up roadblocks. Looks like they were expecting us. More gunfire erupted from the facility direction. Morrison could see muzzle flashes in the darkness. Williams and Chin were engaged with hostiles near the bunkers. All units, fall back to the monastery, Morrison ordered. We're blown. I repeat, our cover is blown. Santos fired again, then slumped against the log. Commander, I'm hit. Morrison crawled over to her. Blood soaked through her tactical vest near her left shoulder. But as he examined the wound, he found something worse. Shrapnel from a ricochet had torn through her side. Blood was pooling underneath her. How bad? She asked. Morrison pressed his hands against the wound. You'll be fine. But we need to move. Santos coughed. Blood flecked her lips. Don't lie to me, Commander. How bad? Morrison looked into her eyes. Maria Santos had been with his team for 4 years. She'd saved his life in Afghanistan. She deserved the truth. Internal bleeding. Without surgery. He didn't finish the sentence. Santos nodded. How long do I have? Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less. Radio chatter filled their ears. Williams and Chen were fighting their way toward the monastery. Davis and Jackson were pinned down near the harbor. The facility was swarming with hostiles. Morrison helped Santos to her feet. Can you move? I can move. She chambered a fresh round in her rifle. But Commander, those trucks are still heading for the harbor. Morrison looked toward the facility. The chemical weapons were disappearing into the storm. His team was scattered and under fire. Santos was dying. And Hurricane Miranda was bearing down on them like a freight train. One crisis at a time, Sergeant. First we survive. Then we save the world. The emergency radio transmission played for the third time in Barksdale's communications center. Christina leaned over the radio operator's shoulder, listening to the static-filled distress call. Any station, this is SEAL Team 7. We have a medical emergency, coordinates, need immediate evacuation. The transmission cut to white noise. That's all we've got, Colonel, said Airman First Class Peterson. Signal's too weak. Storm interference is blocking everything else. Christina stared at the radio. Somewhere out there, American warriors were trapped. One of them was dying. She thought of Marcus again, bleeding out in a crashed helicopter while rescue teams sat grounded by weather. Peterson, can you triangulate their position? Working on it, ma'am. Peterson's fingers flew across his keyboard. Based on signal strength and direction. I'd say they're somewhere in the Caribbean. Maybe 300 miles southeast. General Hayes walked into the communications center. Keane, what are you doing here? I told everyone to go home. Sir, we intercepted a SEAL Team emergency transmission. They have wounded and need evacuation. Hayes looked at the weather display on the far wall. Hurricane Miranda had grown into a massive spiral of destruction. Wind speeds now exceeded 150 miles per hour. Where are they? Caribbean. Somewhere in Miranda's path. Hayes shook his head. Then they're on their own until this storm passes. No aircraft can fly in those conditions. Sir, what if? What if nothing, Colonel? I've already lost too many good people to hurricanes. I won't lose any more. Hayes turned to leave. Go home, Christina. That's an order. But Christina didn't go home. She walked to the weather station and studied the storm's projected path. Miranda was a monster, but monsters had patterns. Weaknesses. She pulled up historical data on Category 4 hurricanes, looking for something the meteorologists might have missed. Rodriguez found her there 2 hours later. Colonel, you're supposed to be at home boarding up windows. Tom, look at this. Christina pointed to the computer screen. Every major hurricane has calm corridors. Spaces between the spiral bands where the winds drop to manageable levels. Rodriguez studied the data. Maybe. But those corridors move constantly. You'd have to time everything perfectly. A B-52 is built for high-altitude penetration. We could fly above the worst turbulence, then drop down through a calm corridor for extraction. Extraction? Rodriguez raised his eyebrows. Colonel, you're not seriously thinking about flying into Miranda. Before Christina could answer, Peterson called out from his radio station. Colonel, I've got another transmission from the SEAL team. Christina rushed over. The new message was clearer but more desperate. This is Commander Morrison, SEAL Team 7. Our medic is critically wounded. Internal bleeding. She needs surgery within 4 hours or she dies. We're trapped on Isla Perdida. Hostile forces have us surrounded. Cannot reach standard extraction points. Any aircraft capable of storm penetration, please respond. The radio went silent. Christina looked at Rodriguez. 4 hours, Tom. That woman has 4 hours to live. Colonel, even if we could penetrate the storm, how would we extract them? A B-52 can't land on some tiny island. We don't land. We drop supplies. Medical equipment. Emergency surgical kit. Maybe buy them enough time for the storm to pass. Rodriguez studied the weather data again. It's theoretical suicide, Colonel. One mistake and we're just another wreck in the ocean. Maybe. Or maybe we save 7 American lives. General Hayes appeared behind them. Colonel Keane, didn't I tell you to go home? Christina turned to face him. Sir, the SEAL team's medic is dying. We might be able to help. Negative. No flights until this storm passes. General, what if it was your daughter bleeding out on that island? Hayes's face hardened. It's not my daughter. It's not your brother. And I won't let you kill yourself trying to play hero. The mention of Marcus hit Christina like a physical blow. But instead of backing down, she stepped closer to Hayes. Sir, my brother died because we couldn't get to him in time. Because we followed the rules and waited for perfect conditions that never came. I won't let that happen again. Your brother died because he took unnecessary risks in impossible weather. My brother died because he was brave enough to try when everyone else said it couldn't be done. Christina's voice rose. Just like those SEALs are going to die if we don't act. Rodriguez cleared his throat. General, theoretically, a B-52 could penetrate the storm. We'd have to thread the needle between spiral bands, but it's possible. Hayes looked between Christina and Rodriguez. You're both insane. Maybe, Christina said. But I'm also the best storm pilot in this command. You know it. I know it. And somewhere out there, 7 Americans are counting on us to be better than the weather report. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Outside, wind rattled the building's windows. The answer is no, Colonel. Final answer. Christina nodded slowly. Understood, sir. Hayes left the communications center. Christina waited 30 seconds, then turned to Rodriguez. Tom, how long would it take to prep a B-52 for emergency flight? Colonel, the general just said. How long, Tom? Rodriguez sighed. 20 minutes. But Christina, if we do this, we're both finished. Court-martial. Prison. End of career. Better than living with the knowledge we could have saved them and chose not to try. Peterson looked up from his radio station. Colonel, I just intercepted another message. The SEAL team medic, she's got maybe 3 hours left. Christina walked toward the door. Tom, prep the bird. I'll meet you on the flight line. Where are you going? To get us clearance from the only authority that matters. Christina pulled out her cell phone. My conscience. 23 minutes after General Hayes left the communications center, Christina's B-52 lifted off from Barksdale Air Force Base. The massive bomber climbed through sheets of rain and crosswinds that would have grounded any other aircraft. Only Rodriguez had joined her. The rest of the crew stayed behind. Control tower is trying to reach us, Rodriguez said from the navigator's station. Radio problems, Christina replied. She switched off the communication system. Can't hear them. Colonel, last chance to turn around. Once we enter the storm's outer bands, there's no going back. Christina looked at the weather radar. Hurricane Miranda filled the entire screen, a swirling mass of green, yellow, and red. The storm had grown even stronger in the past hour. Sustained winds now reached 165 miles per hour. Tom, 26 years ago, your son was born premature. Remember? The doctors said he wouldn't make it through the night. Rodriguez nodded. Tommy Jr. He was 3 pounds. You stayed by his incubator for 4 days straight. Wouldn't leave. Wouldn't give up. What if you'd listened to the doctors and gone home? He wouldn't have made it. Sometimes the impossible choice is the only choice. Christina pushed the throttles forward. Hold on. The B-52 entered Miranda's outer spiral bands at 30,000 feet. Immediately, the aircraft began bucking like an angry horse. Christina fought the controls as wind shears grabbed the bomber's wings and tried to flip it upside down. Turbulence is beyond anything I've seen, Rodriguez shouted over the noise. We're getting hit with 60-mile-per-hour updrafts. It's going to get worse. Christina watched the altimeter spin wildly. The B-52 dropped 1,000 feet in 3 seconds, then shot upward like a rocket. Miranda's not following the normal hurricane pattern. Rodriguez studied his instruments. The readings made no sense. Colonel, this storm has 2 eye walls. I've never seen anything like it. 2 eyes? Look at the radar. There's a smaller circulation inside the main eye. The storm is feeding on itself, getting stronger by the minute. Christina stared at the display. Instead of one comm center, Hurricane Miranda had developed a double eye structure. The inner eye was spinning faster than the outer one, creating unprecedented wind patterns. What's our current wind speed? 170 miles per hour. And climbing. The B-52 shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the instrument panel. Christina felt the aircraft's frame groaning under the stress. We're officially in a Category 5 hurricane, Rodriguez said. First one on record with this double-eye formation. Lightning exploded around them. Not the distant flashes Christina had seen from other storms, but close strikes that lit up the cockpit like daylight. The electromagnetic pulse from each strike interfered with their instruments. Navigation system is glitching, Rodriguez reported. GPS is completely down. Can you compensate? I'm trying, but... Rodriguez's voice was drowned out by a massive thunderclap that seemed to shake the entire aircraft. The B-52 suddenly dropped 3,000 feet in 5 seconds. Christina pulled back on the yoke, but the controls felt mushy. Hydraulic fluid was leaking somewhere. Tom, I'm losing hydraulic pressure on the primary system. Rodriguez flipped switches on his panel. Backup systems are online, but they won't last long in these conditions. Through the windscreen, Christina could see nothing but swirling gray clouds and constant lightning. The storm was so thick that their headlights couldn't penetrate more than a few feet. How far to the SEAL team? If my calculations are right, about 40 miles. But Colonel, the storm is intensifying faster than any hurricane in recorded history. Another violent downdraft slammed the B-52 toward the ocean. Christina felt the aircraft's nose drop sharply. She could see whitecaps through breaks in the clouds. They were too low. Pulling up, pulling up. The bomber's engines screamed at maximum power. Slowly, painfully, the aircraft climbed back to safe altitude. That was close, Rodriguez said. Too close. How are we doing on fuel? Burning faster than calculated. These headwinds are killing us. Christina made a decision. We're going to drop altitude. Get below the worst turbulence. Colonel, that puts us in the heart of the storm. It also puts us closer to the SEALs. The B-52 descended through layer after layer of violent weather. At 15,000 feet, the turbulence was beyond anything in Christina's experience. The aircraft rolled and pitched like a ship in heavy seas. At 10,000 feet, lightning began hitting them directly. We're taking electrical strikes, Rodriguez called out. Multiple systems are offline. Christina looked at her instrument panel. Half the warning lights were flashing red. The primary navigation computer was dead. Radio communications were down. Even the backup hydraulic system was showing pressure loss. Tom, can you still track our position? Rodriguez was working with pencil and paper, calculating their location the old-fashioned way. Best guess, we're 30 miles from Isla Perdida. But without GPS or radar, I'm flying blind. Then we navigate like your grandfather did in World War II. Dead reckoning and prayers. Lightning struck the B-52's left wing. The electrical discharge lit up the cockpit and fried more electronics. Christina smelled burning wires and saw smoke coming from Rodriguez's station. Fire in the navigation bay. Rodriguez grabbed an extinguisher and put out the flames. We've lost most of our instruments, Colonel. I'm down to compass and airspeed indicator. Christina felt the aircraft shudder again. This time, it wasn't turbulence. Something was wrong with the engines. Engine number 3 is overheating, she reported. Oil pressure is dropping. Can we shut it down? In this weather? We need all 8 engines just to stay airborne. The B-52 lurched violently to the right. Christina corrected, but the aircraft felt different. Heavier. Less responsive. Colonel, I'm picking up a radio transmission. Very faint. Rodriguez had managed to get one backup radio working. Through the static, Christina could hear a desperate voice. Any aircraft, this is Commander Morrison. Our medic is unconscious. Severe blood loss. We need help now or she dies. Christina keyed her microphone. Commander Morrison, this is Colonel Keane, United States Air Force. We're inbound to your position. The response was filled with static, but she could make out the words, thank God. How long until you reach us? Christina looked at Rodriguez. He held up 10 fingers. 10 minutes, Commander. Hold tight. But as she spoke, engine number 3 began making grinding noises. Warning lights flashed across her panel. The aircraft was falling apart around them. Tom, can this bird hold together for 10 more minutes? Rodriguez looked at his instruments. I don't know, Colonel. But those SEALs are about to find out. Christina saw Isla Perdida through breaks in the storm clouds. The island looked like a dark speck surrounded by massive waves. Palm trees bent almost horizontal in the hurricane winds. The ancient monastery sat on a cliff overlooking the sea, its stone walls battered by wind and rain. There, Rodriguez pointed through the windscreen. 2 o'clock, about 5 miles. Christina banked the damaged B-52 toward the island. Engine number 3 was barely running. Oil streamed from the cowling, whipped away by the wind. The hydraulic system was failing. Every control input took tremendous effort. Commander Morrison, this is Colonel Keane. I have visual on your position. Morrison's voice crackled through the static. Colonel, we've got a problem. Hostiles have shoulder-fired missiles. They know you're coming. Christina felt ice in her stomach. Surface-to-air missiles could bring down her bomber in seconds. But there was something else. Something worse. Tom, look at that island. How big is it? Rodriguez checked his charts. About 2 miles long, half a mile wide. Any airstrips? Nothing that could handle a B-52. The monastery courtyard might be big enough for a helicopter, but that's it. Christina stared at the island. She'd assumed they could land, or at least hover low enough for the SEALs to climb aboard. But her massive bomber couldn't get close to the ground on terrain like that. Colonel, how do you plan to extract us? Morrison asked over the radio. Christina keyed her microphone, then stopped. She didn't have an answer. Colonel? Rodriguez looked at her. What's the plan? I'm working on it. Christina studied the island below. The monastery sat in the center, surrounded by steep cliffs and rocky outcroppings. There was no way to land safely. No way to hover. No way to get close enough for a rope extraction. But the SEALs needed medical supplies. Without them, Santos would die. Tom, can we do a supply drop? In these winds? The parachutes would be blown into the ocean. What about a low-altitude drop? No parachutes. Rodriguez stared at her. You mean bomb run altitude? Colonel, that would put us right in the missile engagement zone. Lightning lit up the sky around them. Christina saw something that made her heart race. The electrical discharge had illuminated several men on the monastery's walls. Men with weapons pointed skyward. Commander Morrison, I count 6 hostiles with missiles. Confirm? That's affirmative. They've been tracking your approach for the last 5 minutes. Christina banked the B-52 in a wide circle around the island. She could see muzzle flashes from the monastery walls. The hostiles were firing at her aircraft, even though she was still too far away for small arms to be effective. They're desperate, she told Rodriguez. Probably running low on ammunition. Or they're trying to force us into missile range. Christina thought about her brother Marcus. He'd faced a similar situation 2 years ago. Hostile fire, impossible weather, wounded Americans who needed help. He'd chosen to go in anyway. Marcus had died. But Santos was dying too. Tom, what if we use the storm itself as a weapon? What do you mean? Look at the lightning activity. It's constant. Electromagnetic pulses strong enough to knock out electronics. Rodriguez followed her logic. You want to time our approach with a lightning strike? Exactly. The EMP would disable their missile guidance systems. Give us a few seconds to make the drop. Colonel, that would require flying directly into a lightning strike. On purpose. The B-52 can handle electrical discharge. We've already been hit twice. Not intentionally. Christina watched the storm patterns below. Lightning struck the island every 30 to 40 seconds. The strikes were powerful enough to light up the entire monastery. Tom, can you calculate the timing? I need to know exactly when the next strike will hit. Rodriguez pulled out his stopwatch. For 3 minutes, he tracked the lightning pattern. Strikes are coming every 37 seconds, plus or minus 3 seconds. That's our window. 37 seconds from the last strike, we make our approach. Christina keyed her radio. Commander Morrison, we're going to make a supply drop. Emergency medical kit and communications equipment. How close can you get? Christina looked at the terrain below. The monastery courtyard was about 50 feet square, surrounded by stone walls. In perfect conditions, it would be a challenging drop. In hurricane winds with hostile missiles, it was nearly impossible. Close enough. She lined up the B-52 for its approach. The aircraft bucked and rolled in the violent winds. Through her headset, she could hear Rodriguez counting down. Lightning strike in 10 seconds. 9. 8. 7. Christina pushed the bomber into a steep dive toward the island. The altimeter spun downward. 5,000 feet. 4,000. 3,000. 5. 4. 3. The hostile missiles launched just as lightning struck the monastery. Christina saw the bright flash illuminate everything below. 2 shoulder-fired rockets streaked upward, but their guidance systems had been fried by the electromagnetic pulse. The missiles flew wild, missing the B-52 by hundreds of yards. Drop in 3 seconds, Christina announced. 2. 1. Drop. Rodriguez released the medical supplies and communications equipment. The packages tumbled toward the monastery courtyard, buffeted by hurricane winds. Christina pulled the B-52 out of its dive. The aircraft groaned under the stress. Engine number 3 finally gave up, shutting down completely. Oil and metal fragments streamed behind them. Did we hit the target? Christina asked. Rodriguez strained to see through the storm. Close. Very close. The supplies landed in the courtyard. Morrison's voice came through the radio. Direct hit. We have the medical kit. Santos is getting treatment now. Christina felt relief flood through her. But it was short-lived. Colonel, we've got bigger problems, Rodriguez said. Engine number 6 is overheating. We're losing oil pressure on the port side. Christina looked at her instruments. Half her engines were either damaged or failing. The hydraulic system was barely functional. They were still 300 miles from Barksdale Air Force Base. Can we make it home? I don't know. These headwinds are going to eat up fuel fast. Lightning struck near the B-52's right wing. This time, the electrical discharge fried more systems. The backup navigation computer went dark. The remaining radios started smoking. Tom, we're falling apart. I know. But we did it, Colonel. We saved them. Christina looked back toward the island. Through the storm, she could see lights in the monastery. The SEALs were alive. Santos was getting medical treatment. But now they had to save themselves. The B-52 climbed slowly through the hurricane's violent winds. Every mile was a struggle. Every minute brought new mechanical failures. Christina coaxed the damaged bomber higher, fighting to get above the worst turbulence. Rodriguez to any station, Tom called on their last working radio. This is Air Force Thunder 1. We are damaged and requesting emergency assistance. Static answered them. Tom, how long can we stay airborne? Rodriguez studied his fuel calculations. Maybe 2 hours. If we're lucky. Christina looked at the fuel gauges. The numbers were dropping faster than they should. Somewhere, fuel was leaking. We're not going to make it to Barksdale, she said quietly. Then where? Christina thought about the damaged aircraft, the failing engines, the dwindling fuel. They needed a miracle. I don't know, she admitted. But we've got 2 hours to figure it out. Christina's B-52 limped through the breaking storm clouds like a wounded bird. Behind them, Hurricane Miranda was finally losing strength as it moved inland. Ahead, the lights of the Louisiana coast glowed in the distance. But the bomber was dying beneath them. Engine number 6 just seized up, Rodriguez reported. That's 2 down, 6 to go. Fuel status? We're running on fumes, Colonel. Maybe 20 minutes of flight time left. Christina fought the controls as another hydraulic line failed. The B-52 wanted to roll left with every gust of wind. Her arms ached from fighting the aircraft for the past 4 hours. Through her headset, she heard a familiar voice. Thunder 1, this is Barksdale Tower. Colonel Keane, if you can hear this, we have emergency equipment standing by. Christina grabbed her radio. Barksdale Tower, this is Thunder 1. We're inbound with multiple system failures. Christina. It was General Hayes. Thank God you're alive. What's your status? 2 engines down, hydraulic system failing, fuel critical. Request immediate clearance for emergency landing. You've got it. Runway 27 is cleared. Fire trucks are standing by. Christina could see the base now, its runway lights cutting through the dawn darkness. But something was wrong. The approach looked too steep. The aircraft wasn't responding to her inputs. Tom, I'm losing elevator control. Rodriguez checked his instruments. Backup hydraulics just failed. We're down to manual reversion. Manual reversion meant no power assist on the controls. Christina would have to muscle the massive bomber to the ground using pure physical strength. In perfect conditions, it was exhausting. With battle damage and system failures, it might be impossible. Colonel, we're coming in too fast and too steep. I know. Christina pulled back on the yoke with everything she had. The B-52 responded slowly, grudgingly. Come on, sweetheart. Just a little more. The runway rushed up toward them. Christina could see fire trucks lining the taxiways, their red and blue lights flashing. Ground crews stood ready with emergency equipment. 100 feet, Rodriguez called out. 90. 80. The B-52 hit the runway hard. Christina felt the impact through her entire body. The aircraft bounced once, twice, then settled onto the concrete with a screech of tires and brakes. We're down! Rodriguez shouted. Christina applied maximum braking, but the B-52's weight and speed carried them far down the runway. For a moment, she thought they might run out of concrete. Then, slowly, the bomber came to a stop. Fire trucks surrounded them immediately. Emergency crews sprayed foam on the hot engines while medics checked for injuries. Christina sat in her pilot seat, hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Colonel. Rodriguez unbuckled his harness. We made it. Christina nodded, but she couldn't speak. The relief was overwhelming. General Hayes was waiting when they climbed down from the aircraft. His face was stern, but Christina could see something else in his eyes. Pride. Colonel Keane, you're under arrest for disobeying direct orders. Christina straightened. Yes, sir. You're also recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross. Hayes stepped closer. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen. What about the SEALs, sir? Hayes smiled for the first time in hours. Commander Morrison radioed 30 minutes ago. The storm has passed over their position. Sergeant Santos is stable and ready for medical evacuation. The entire team is safe. Christina felt her knees go weak. They're all alive? All 7. Because you refused to follow orders. An hour later, Christina sat in the base chapel. She'd cleaned up and changed into a fresh uniform, but she still felt the storm inside her bones. The chapel was quiet, peaceful after the chaos of the hurricane. She walked to the memorial wall where names were engraved in black marble. Her finger traced the letters of her brother's name, Captain Marcus J. Keane, United States Marine Corps. "I used to think I failed you," she whispered. "Thought I should have found a way to save you." The chapel door opened behind her. Rodriguez walked in and sat in one of the pews. "Talking to Marcus?" Christina nodded. "I always wondered what he was thinking in those final minutes. Whether he regretted trying the rescue. And now?" Christina thought about the past 24 hours. The impossible storm. The failing aircraft. The choice to risk everything for 7 people she'd never met. Now I know he was thinking the same thing I was thinking out there. That some things are worth the risk. Rodriguez joined her at the memorial wall. The SEAL team sent a message. "They want to thank you personally when they get stateside. They don't need to thank me. They would have done the same thing. Maybe. But you're the one who actually did it." Christina touched her brother's name one more time, then turned away from the wall. "Tom, how many young pilots do we have on base?" "About 30. "Why?" "I want to start teaching storm flying techniques. Not the crazy stuff we did yesterday, but the fundamentals. How to read wind patterns. How to penetrate severe weather safely." Rodriguez smiled. "Think the Air Force will approve that?" "General Hayes already did. He wants me to develop a new training program. Apparently, there's talk of creating a specialized hurricane penetration squadron." They walked toward the chapel door together. Outside, the morning sun was breaking through the last of Miranda's clouds. The base looked clean and fresh, washed by the storm. "Colonel, can I ask you something? When we were flying through that hurricane, were you scared?" Christina considered the question. "Terrified. But not of dying." "Then what?" "Of failing. Of letting those SEALs down the way I thought I'd let Marcus down." Rodriguez nodded. "And now?" Christina looked up at the clear blue sky. Somewhere up there, new storms were forming. New emergencies would arise. New impossible missions would need someone brave enough to attempt them. Now I know the difference between being reckless and being ready. A week later, Sergeant Maria Santos walked into Christina's office at Barksdale Air Force Base. She was pale and thin, but alive. "Colonel Keane? I wanted to thank you personally." Christina stood and shook her hand. "How are you feeling, Sergeant?" "Lucky to be alive. The doctors said I was maybe an hour away from bleeding out when your medical supplies arrived. I'm glad we could help." Santos smiled. "Colonel, there's something else. My daughter is 8 years old. She wants to be a pilot when she grows up. She says she wants to be brave like the lady who flew through the hurricane to save her mommy." Christina felt tears in her eyes. "What's her name?" "Christina. I named her Christina." Outside Christina's office window, a B-52 Stratofortress lifted off from the runway and climbed into the Louisiana sky. Soon, Christina would be back up there too, training the next generation of storm pilots. Teaching them when to take risks and when to trust their judgment. Teaching them that sometimes, the impossible flight is the one that saves lives. Marcus would have been proud. What did you think of Colonel Christina Keane's incredible storm rescue mission? If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales of American heroes.